Hey adapters, welcome back to the show. We're going to learn about the Peace and Freedom Challenge. The challenge, international in scope, was designed to give problem solvers a platform to gain support for their innovative solutions to these problems. Joining me in this discussion is Jay Godsall, CEO of Solarship. Jay is a Canadian entrepreneur based in Toronto. As a student in 1989, he proposed the use of airships for transport in landlocked Africa. In 2006, he created Solarship to connect remote areas with the global community. Also joining us in a few minutes is Dr. Nat Quansah. Nat is a Ghanaian ethnobotanist, educator, and consultant in health and environmental issues, and he's based in Madagascar. Okay, now let's check in with Jay and learn about the Peace and Freedom Challenge. Hey, Jay, welcome to the show.
Hey, Doug.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about, we're going to talk about the challenge, but first let's learn a little bit about Solarship. What do you do there? What is this company?
Solarship, simply put, started out making solar powered airships, and they're really supposed to be unstoppable machines. They are electric bush planes. So, Canada being a place that I'm Canadian, and we have very few roads into our remote areas. About 20% of Canada has road access. So, um, uh, we really, it's in Canada, we started looking at, well, how do we bridge remote areas with the global economy, with the rest of the country? I ended up going to Africa with some high school friends and saw a much bigger opportunity there, especially with solar and electric. And so our mission really is to build a bridge, a transport. I mean, initially it was a transport bridge, then communications. How do you connect remote areas with the world? And one way to do that is to put buoyancy to work to get airships in the air and put solar to work for propulsion and moving them around. So that's what we do. We make solar powered airships to connect remote areas with the rest of the world.
So, what are some of the countries that you work with?
I mean, we have our head office in Canada, and if you take Africa, really from Cape Town up to the equator, we're pretty much in every country there. And so Southern Africa into Eastern Africa, Kenya, Uganda. A big place that's a really really challenging place that we love is DRC. So Democratic Republic of Congo is more than a third the size of the lower 48 states and has very little road infrastructure connecting its people and its places to the rest of the world. So that'd be a really challenging place. So just picture our comfort zone is, Cape Town up to Kenya, Kinshasa over to Madagascar. That's our sweet spot.
That's a pretty big sweet spot. All right, let's talk about the Peace and Freedom Challenge. This is a recent event that just happened. Tell us about it. What is it? And we're going to, I guess, learn a lot more about that with Nat when he comes on.
Sure. I mean, if you think about the changes that are happening in the world today, change is happening faster than solutions. And the pandemic showed that the world has a real, the world doesn't collaborate as well as it could. And then COP26 comes along, and I think we're starting to see that COP26, it's a lot of effort in, but the world doesn't collaborate as well as it could. And so for us, a big thing is, well, how do you go to the points of pain where changes are going to kill people and they're really going to upset people? They're going to really disrupt things. And we consider those places home for us is into remote areas and vulnerable places. So if you think about, pandemic, you'd have a disease from the world going in, killing a lot of people, hurting a lot of people, and not a lot of medicines going in. So that's not good. And then around climate change, nature's changing, and nature's going to kill people and hurt people in some places a lot more than others. And so, coming back to our sweet spot, how do we go into these places and ask people how they would overcome these challenges? So, peace, the theme is around saving lives. Freedom, the theme is around how do we shift from a carbon economy to a post carbon economy and challenge smart people at these points of pain that are changing fast, challenge them to come up with ideas.
Okay, so I think really interesting about this is that you're bringing entrepreneurs into this whole idea of peace and freedom. Why focus on that demographic?
Well, you think about the French word entreprendre just means I pick it up into my own hands. It's just taking things into your own hands. So if you think about COP26 as a concept, it's a bunch of people who are supposed to be leaders at the top trying to figure stuff out and then kind of sell it down to us, or explain it or implement it, whatever. But bottom up, I mean, if you go to poor places that are crowded with people, you run into tons of smart people. And a lot of them are entrepreneurs because there is no system in place. So you think about the current systems we have in the world, we're supposed to change them. Well, people who are in those systems don't change systems very well. People who are out of those systems are not resistant to change, and they will change because of necessity. So there's a percentage of all populations that are naturally entrepreneurial, and some people just get pushed into taking things into their own hands. If we reach out to them, they tend to come forward. And smart people from these types of places are not shy. They think they're smart. They think they have the solutions. So then the interface is challenge them to come up with solutions to these problems. And the first phase is you get a lot of content, a lot of discussion, and people get smarter as they go. So when someone in Madagascar comes up with an idea and someone in Congo comes up with an idea, when they find out what the other idea is, the game gets faster and better.
Okay, so now let's bring Nat on, one of the participants in the challenge, and hear his perspective on how the event went. Hey, Nat, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doug.
All right, I gave a little bit of a background on you, but could you give a little bit more information on what you do and where you're at and some of the things that you're responsible for?
I'm Nat Quansah. Yep, I'm a Ghanaian, but I'm based in Madagascar. I work in the health and environment issues. Very interested in ensuring that we arrive at sustainable use of resources, integrated healthcare, complementing each other in making sure that solutions are found for issues facing humanity. So that is one of the reasons why I joined the Peace and Freedom Challenge, because it's an idea of coming to make sure that we harness and collect information and ideas from diverse people, because diversity is at the heart of creativity. And so that is what I am doing.
Okay, fantastic. And Jay, let's start with you. How did you end up recruiting people like Nat to be involved with the challenge?
Well, I've been going to that part of the world for a long time. So I first arrived in Madagascar in November 1990, and Nat was putting on a presentation at the American Embassy. I went there and asked some difficult questions. Next thing you know, Nat recruited me. So there are old relationships that go way back. And I think this is the same thing, you know, in the United States, when people are in a certain tech sector, they get to know other people that could be competitors, collaborators. You get to know people. So we've been in this space where we're trying to make technology, trying to make innovation, and trying to take it to, you know, these places that are changing fast. They have a lot of young people. So I would say there's an existing, very strong network. When I introduce Nat to somebody else in Zambia, they're on the same page with, I mean, it just poof right away. So I think there's a human network in place, and all we really need to do is use these new tools, you know, video chats, to get people talking, and the pace picks up really quickly. So we have that human network. The tools for communicating are getting better. It doesn't mean that, you know, places like Madagascar do face barriers of energy and internet, and things collapse and stop, but a little bit of perseverance, Doug, and you get back online, you keep going.
Okay, Nat, so this event just happened, so it's fresh in your head. So give us some highlights. Describe some of the things that happened.
Well, when we had the overall theme was health and environment, pandemics, and climate change, because pandemic and climate change fall into the overall theme of health and environment. And so we presented it to people, and they responded to that in the context of their local issues. And so they came up with the challenges that they are facing. And then the whole idea was they teamed up. We had teams coming together and working independently, each working on the challenge that they've decided on. And then they brainstormed and discussed and went about, put the ideas together and brought it out in a video format. That is what happened it was a 24-hour straight session that people had the options to break and have breaks. It's a 24-hour. So they were doing that. They will break for meals. They will break to take a nap. 24 hours straight. That was the whole idea. And it was like coming up with issues that they face. And that is the whole idea, that come up with your challenge and propose a solution. Because we are looking at solution seekers, those who are able to come up with solutions that is pertinent to their local issues. That is what happened during the day.
Okay, so Jay, give us some more detail too. So some of the other additional countries that were participating, and literally in this 24 hours, a lot can happen. Can you sort of describe the dynamics of what people were doing and such?
Well, first of all, in our human network, Nat and I would know a lot of people where we can challenge them. So what we said is we're testing and evaluating this concept. Please don't let smart people be shy about bad presentation skills. So just put the camera in front of you and talk. Some people have, can make decks and make them slick. Other people don't. And a lot of people don't have resources. I would say you go to rank the poorest countries in the world, and we're in, and provoking these people to come forward. So it's a competitive environment where people have to present ideas, and some people are shy, some people aren't, some people can package, some people can't. We said we are testing this with you. Our goal is to make it hard, make it really difficult. After 24 hours, your mind is gonna pop like a popcorn machine on hour 25 and 26. You'll have better ideas. Don't worry about it. We'll do this again. So once they trust you that there's a continuum, they do put themselves out there. They're not afraid to be embarrassed as much as they would have been. That would have been a really big barrier. Give it a go. Say what's going on. Think of Madagascar. A million people are going to die in the South. People from the South know what's going on in the South. They have strong ideas. So Zambia has had floods and droughts. DRC, one of the most difficult places in the world, is Eastern DRC. Burundi is routinely in the news for being one of the most severely challenged places in the world, most densely populated, usually ranks as the poorest country in the world. You see the ideas coming out of there's huge positive energy, and these are smart people who think they can solve problems. They would like the tournament to get bigger and more competitive because they think bring on the world. Like, it's a real attitude change from defeatists. They think bring on the world, we will solve these problems. So first you build a bridge of trust into these communities, and then you challenge them and they bring their game forward.
Okay, so Nat, you'd mentioned earlier that climate change and the pandemic are the two big themes associated with what people were talking about and such. How was that really integrated? Was that challenging for the participants, or were they getting really creative? Tell me about that.
They were very, very creative. They, as I initially said, they responded to that broad theme of climate change and pandemics in the context of health and environment. And they looked at it in the context of their local situation. So the challenge was, what were we facing? What am I facing? What is the challenge that falls within the theme of climate change and pandemics? So people would come up with issues like, harnessing and managing electronic and plastic waste. That was something that came out strongly. Deforestation. So they took the challenge based on their local situation and then came up with the solutions that they think is the way to resolve their local issue. That is the way the whole thing panned out during the 24 hours. And we've got some brilliant ideas that people have come up with, and we look forward to even more and making sure that those ideas become reality.
Okay, Jay, this is the question for you. Is like I'm visiting this 24 hours where all this innovation is happening, but literally, what's happening at the very end? How does the challenge end? There's a winner. How does that dynamic work?
Yeah, so everything is built to be self-reliant. So and Doug, I hope you'll appreciate when you look like you and me and we go into the poorest countries in the world, most people are going to say, hey, give us some money, we'll participate. But that's not scalable. If you top down it with some cash first, it's not as challenging, it's not as scalable. So you have a 24-hour tournament. Prior to the 24-hour tournament, and Madagascar and Tanzania were really good at driving the structure. So you have a 24-hour tournament. You need problem definition going in so that people know the rules of the game. Then you need to have tight guidelines about how these teams will play. They get 24 hours to come up with their ideas, and then they present them to a panel of judges who are local. Those panel of judges rank them according to criteria that has been, globally set loosely around what we've agreed upon as a global, let's say, community. But each individual community gets to do their own thing. So there's peace, freedom, and then wild card, because people break the rules. And that's, we want to keep it tight to begin with, but then people start breaking the rules. And they start doing things that you didn't expect them to do. So at the end of 24 hours, you have a local ranking of what they thought were local priorities. And it's funny, Nat smiled at me at the end and he said, my favorite didn't make the top 3. And that's good, because then these ideas don't die. They're ideas that come from the front lines of what the world's going to be facing. And these people aren't wrong. They may need to keep working on their idea, but they're not wrong. You get a huge emphasis on pollution in some places, and you say, what does that have to do with climate change? Other people will take a look at carbon and trees, but a lot of that has to do with the strengths of the local community. Tanzania, for example, had really strong app developers, and so a lot of their ideas have apps in them. So, Doug, you have a structure that's local, that locals vote on, locals, local participants, local communities, and they judge their own ideas. Then we pool the ideas. I think going forward, it'll be really exciting to see, A, what other people outside of those local communities think of these ideas. B, when people start talking to each other about improving things, then I think you're going to see some momentum, and it'll give us the chance. We promised them this was test and evaluation. It wasn't judgment day. Then it'll give us the chance to build tools that are more customized towards what we learned. So learning experience first.
All right, Nat. So you obviously probably learned a lot yourself. And as you were seeing these things unfold and you're involved with these things, rarely do people get together and have these kind of brainstorming sessions and then learn from them. So that's fantastic. Anything that really stood out for you, Nat, that you might take back and kind of help you do what you do?
Yes, I mean, the people, the idea that they were recognized, the recognition that you are capable of having ideas, that spurred people on. And so that is something that I realized, that acknowledging the capability of individuals and giving them the opportunity, that was very, very poignant, as people realize that, oh, we are being recognized. We've been part of the solution seekers. So that is something that I've picked up, and they have, literally, they've shown me that it's important that we recognize that there's a pool, there's a lot of people there. I'll put it this way. The underground water is very, very important, but it can never, ever come up and say it's a spring until it breaks out of the soil, out of the ground to come up. Then it becomes a spring. The ideas, the potentials are there, and the potentials are like the underground water. And until they break out to become a reality, they are still potentials. And so to become a spring, that is where them seeing that they have been recognized and acknowledged and allowed to come up with what they do, what they know, what they can contribute, that is very, very important. And that is something that I've picked up, and I'm going to, as I move forward, that is how I'm going to look at things even more. That give people the opportunity and let them work in a collaborative way, complementing each other, is what I was also panned out during the competition. There were teams, they were competing, but this collaboratively, independently, but still doing things that, and during the competition, there was this global moment. And that global moment was very, very instrumental in people seeing that, oh, we are not alone, which means people are independent, but are also dependent. And that getting the balance there was a solidarity that came out during that global moment. And people were really, really spent on that we are doing something, that our colleagues are also doing something there. And when we put them together, complementing each other, we'll come up with the solutions that is facing humanity.
Wow, fantastic description. So Nat, I hate to let you go, but Jay and I are going to wrap up this discussion, and it's been great to have you on and sharing your experiences. Any sort of final thoughts before Jay and I wrap up the episode?
Diversity is a key. And I think this Peace and Freedom Challenge has shown us that harnessing diversity is a way forward. And I think humanity must look at doing things in a complementary manner, inclusively, because every bit is important. And I'll even put it this way. Let's look at the micros. And because the localities, the local situation is the micro, and before it to become the macro, you need to bring the micros together. So thanks to everybody who was part of the global challenge and the organizers, local in the diverse places. And I hope our ideas that have been collected are going to be pulled together in a complementary manner and to help solve some of the issues facing humanity. Thank you.
All right, great final words. Thank you, Nat. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, Jay, you and I are going to wrap up this episode about the impact of this event. That Nat obviously has some incredible perspectives in his own involvement with that. So, just briefly, what did you learn from the event? I mean, you shared some of it, but what's some of the big takeaways?
I think there are three. One is when you ask real players in the problem-solving world to solve problems, they love it. They love being invited into the challenge. And if you have Tanzania, who's going through some difficult times right now, saying they're going through difficult times, and then Zambia has a national blackout on the day, then Zambia's going, luxury. At least you have electricity. So by bringing them together, they start provoking the other, that they're solving problems. Like there's a competitive pride here and a gamesmanship. So the competitive side of it is co-opetition. Part of it is they're cooperating with the other. Nat had a really great model for getting sponsors in, and the Tanzanians were stuck, and they just started yapping at each other. And suddenly the sponsors start coming into Tanzania, and at the last minute, a bank in Burundi, the poorest country in the world, bang, they come in to sponsor it. So I think the number one part of the impact is that when you ask these people to solve problems, they come forward and they don't just solve their problems, they solve other people's problems, and they start to provoke Canadians and Americans about what you could do over there too. So that's one. The second thing is the massive disrespect that they feel. And COP26, you can tell it. If you look at the Prime Minister of Bahamas' speech, there's this massive divide between North and South, rich and poor. They feel massively disrespected. We don't want to sit on that. What we learned is that if you show respect, you will gain respect and trust. And I think we did polls. We asked people for feedback. So the data would say, number one is having a problem to solve. Number two is you asked us to solve a problem. And, nobody asks. So I'll put this into American terms. If you take a country the size of America, including Alaska, which is very big, and you take the same size in Southern Africa, and what I call a sweet spot, you have 200 million people in that area under the age of 20. And they want to play the game of solving problems. So it's stupid to ignore them, and they will come and game you. They're game.
Okay, so how can people get involved in what you're doing here as you kind of move forward with it?
Well, I think for us, we wanted to build a website, peaceandfreedom.com, where we could really target it towards these players to come in with their ideas. And, we have Canadian universities and Canadian communities involved. And so there's this exchange there. But I think I would say go to peaceandfreedom.com and sign up. There are two types of people that solve problems in the world. People who have ideas and people who support ideas. So we kind of divide them in between champs and chumps. You have champs. You can be a champion of an idea because you have one, or you can support one, or you're a chump and you're doing nothing. And the world starts to need to be divided between those two. So we have not built the tools at peaceandfreedom.com to really build up a community where it's rolling, where you can be in touch with everybody just yet. We told Africa, especially, we will not overload this thing and be slick. We will establish this as a raw site, let you guys play with it, and then we'll build the tools to respond to your feedback. So, I think we're a couple of weeks away from having those tools. Then we will have more tournaments, and the tournaments will invite more people in. I think the enthusiasm we got from these countries, the poorest in the world, is going to provoke a lot of people to come in for the next tournament. I think we're going to have more sponsors. And I would just say, Solarship, as CEO of a tech company that's in the clean tech, green, so we make planes that don't produce any smoke going to the sky. We have a community, and that community stands to benefit a great deal from the change from carbon to post-carbon. So we will start sponsoring their ideas. That's a really important thing for us to do, is I as CEO need to start investing in those ideas, backing them up, putting technology in place, raising money with my community to back some of these ideas. Some of these ideas are like $2,500. I think the part of this is we've heard from them, they've spoken. Now we want to start getting some money and tools going. Simple things. There are blackouts and internet disconnect all the time. So if you and I are really smart and we get cut off, we're not smart anymore. So we make a really simple airship on a rope. It's got a solar panel on it. It provides really good internet. We will put those in place to the 5 communities that started. It'll show, that we believe in them, and we're putting some infrastructure in place. That'll be really good. And I think we'll just start driving creative minds into the next tournament, bring in sponsors, play the game again.
Well, this is very exciting. What a fantastic event that you put on, and it sounds like you're just kicking off this whole initiative, and there's going to be a lot of interest in what you're doing. Jay, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank Nat for participating and sharing his perspective, but thanks for joining us here at Simpatico.
And one more thing, Doug. I know you're in the United States of America, and universities in the United States of America are global communities, so we'll be looking for your advice on how to connect with American universities and others to bring them into the next round of the tournament and make it bigger.
Well, let's use this platform to keep having those conversations. Yeah, definitely a great idea. I think there'd be a lot of interest in a lot of student-run organizations that would participate in this. So yeah, great idea.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Doug.
Jay, I'm going to bring you into just chatting, but I'm going to close out this episode. Thanks again.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.